What happens when you get a corporate attempt to revive a 90s horror film that no one really remembers? You get Flatliners. Flatliners 2017 is a sequel that really has nothing to do with the previous film, here directed by Nils Arden Oplev, which is kind of baffling as he directed the original Swedish version of Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. The premise is that a group of medical students, played here by people like Ellen Page, Kirsty Clemens, Nina Dobrev, Rogue One's Diego Luna, and James Norton, all experimenting with near-death experiences that heighten their senses, that enable them to do things like play piano or recite medical textbooks, which unfortunately for them comes at a cost, where mistakes from their past essentially come back to haunt them and try to kill them. That premise that I've described, while pretty ridiculous and crazy, actually does sound a lot better than what actually happens in the movie. I'll admit, when I found out this film hadn't been screened for critics, which is usually a big red flag, I was disappointed but still willing to give the movie a chance, as the trailers had looked like the film might be a fun horror flick with a lot of younger, up-and-coming faces that I've liked in all their previous roles before, but oh good lord, the trailers are way scarier than the actual film is, and I hate to say it, but guys, Flatliners is a mess. The movie has just a hard time trying to decide what it wants to be, and fails to commit to any one aspect. One minute it's a med school drama where these young 20-somethings are just trying to get through their medical exams, which I have to admit, these are probably the worst medical students I've seen in any film. In recent memory, there's no way these guys would be real medical students. But the film switches into a horror film that really has no idea how to be a horror film. There were maybe a couple of effective jump scares, but for most of the time, the horror scenes have such poor sound design, you're more likely to be laughing than jumping in your seat. The issue really comes down to the script, as the setup and dialogue of the whole thing is just atrocious. These characters, aside from Diego Luna, are all supposed to have done terrible things in the past as a way to atone for their sins, but for the most part they're all set up to be pretty normal and kinda likable people. The cast do what they can to salvage a lot of the dialogue, but there really is no saving lines designed to pander to audiences. For instance, we know the characters' brains have been retooled thanks to these near-death experiences, and it's made pretty clear, but the film still has characters spouting dialogue like, "It's like her brain has been rewired," as if for some reason by now the audience hadn't already worked that detail out, despite the obvious attempts to show it visually. These characters have their supposed troubled pasts so lazily shoehorned in through quick flashbacks or exposition dumps that really just make you think, why bother? Rather than attempt to have a message about playing God with these near-death experiences, we have these little subplots that clearly no one involved really cared about, as they are resolved so quickly and lazily and absolutely rushed to just get through all the characters in the film, which is crazy as this film is nearly 2 hours long, and at this length the movie really feels its length, when you could have had this whole thing wrapped up in 90 minutes if you just cut out a lot of the bullshit. To add further insult, Ellen Page vanishes from the film about halfway through, which is a pretty clear sign the film was more of a paycheck gig for her, which is absolutely insane as her character is the one who decides to undergo this experience in the first place and drags everyone in, which I have to admit her character completely lacks any real motive as to why she'd want to experiment in such a way. For so long we're left wondering why she'd want to undergo an experiment like this as opposed to literally anything else. They attempt to explain a personal motive as to why she'd be led to this kind of experiment, but her arc is just so quickly resolved and thrown to the side just before she leaves the film for the rest of the characters to try and deal with. The leaps and jumps with characters happen constantly in Flatliners. One moment James Norton's character is in an intense scene with an apparition where we think he's done for, but the film immediately cuts to a scene with the cast all talking with James Norton's character, all okay and breathing perfectly well, where we just have to assume he escaped somehow. There's no context, there's no showing us these important details that would make us actually care about these characters, but the film just doesn't seem interested in that. Flatliners really comes across as an attempt for the studio, Sony surprise surprise, to just make something quick and cheap that they can get out for Halloween, even though we're a month out, based on the name of something that most people have forgotten about. I'll admit I haven't seen the original, but supposedly this is meant to be a sequel to it, with Kiefer Sutherland returning from the original film, although I'm pretty sure these characters had completely different names. On top of this, his character has very little interaction with the main cast. If he had gone through the same experience as our main cast, you'd think maybe he'd be a little more involved, rather than just being shoehorned in because, hey, it's Kiefer Sutherland. Flatliners has a lot of problems, which is crazy because the director and cast involved are all talent we've seen do great work in the past. Instead, we have a desperate attempt for a horror franchise that the studio clearly has no idea what to do with. The film had potential, and you can honestly see it while you're watching it, where if any other director or studio had been behind the movie and the material, you know they would have created something memorable or interesting that is actually worth the time of the audience. In a year with horror hits like It, Get Out, and Annabelle Creation, it's really disappointing to see a horror film degraded to the cliches and baggage that people assume of the horror genre. There is nothing special about this Flatliners, despite a very likable cast that for the most time are trying to make something of what they have to work with. I hate to say it, but Flatliners is definitely dead on arrival. Flatliners gets a 3 out of 10 from me. Guys, I hope you liked this review. If you did like this review, do remember to hit the thumbs up button and leave a comment down below in the comments section. Did you happen to see Flatliners, or were you interested in seeing Flatliners? Do let me know in the comments section. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, do hit the subscribe button with the little bell next to it, which will remind you of when the Mono Report uploads new content. And don't forget, you can follow the Mono Report on Facebook and Twitter at the Mono Report. Thank you so much, guys. Don't forget to stay right here for your Mono Fix. Bye, guys.